Hi, Tony DeWitt here, Missouri appellate attorney and a guy who likes to make the law make sense on YouTube. Today we're going to talk about the shooting on the set of the movie Rust, at least as it pertains to what criminal charges might be brought. And then in our next video, we'll take a look at what kinds of civil actions might be brought. So stay tuned. There are multiple possible explanations for what happened on the set of Rust. The best evidence that we have so far, at least it seems to be in the media, which of course must be discounted somewhat because the media rarely gets all of the facts right. But the understanding that I have is that Mr. Baldwin was given a gun. He was told that it was a cold gun, meaning there was nothing in it. It was not a cold gun, and he drew it, and it discharged, and it killed the cinematographer and wounded the director. Now, let's look at a couple of possible explanations for what happened. The first explanation for what happened is that somebody just made a mistake. It happens. It shouldn't happen. In fact, a couple of days earlier, they had a negligent discharge when Mr. Baldwin's stunt double used his pistol. So again, he'd been told that it was a cold gun and it wasn't a cold gun. So there was a history of problems with cold guns on this set. Now, there had also been some allegations that there were some safety concerns among the crew. You know, I don't know how many of those were manifest before these accidents occurred. You know, there tends to be a lot of Monday morning quarterbacking whenever there's a tragedy like this. And certainly nobody wants to take the blame for something like this. But the bottom line is that there are multiple explanations. And in addition to the stuff happens explanation, there's also the possibility that if indeed there were serious concerns about safety on the set, somebody purposefully loaded that weapon with live rounds for the purpose of demonstrating how unsafe the set was. And if indeed that happened, then that person is at the very least looking at voluntary manslaughter charges, possibly involuntary, but more likely than not voluntary manslaughter charges. Now, voluntary manslaughter is not murder. Voluntary manslaughter is the intentional killing without malice aforethought. In other words, you don't hate somebody, you don't get angry at them and shoot them. That's malice aforethought. But you set this up so that an accident occurs and there is a killing. And the main difference between voluntary and involuntary manslaughter is voluntary manslaughter includes an intent element. You intend to kill or commit serious bodily harm. And obviously, putting a round in a chamber would cause serious bodily harm if nothing else. So you have that aspect of it from a voluntary manslaughter report. And of course, if somebody didn't really intend for it to be shot in a person's direction because they assumed that any person with a brain in their head would be demonstrating some gun safety techniques and not pointing the gun at somebody or at something that they didn't wish to destroy, then at the very least you have involuntary manslaughter. So that's one of the questions that ultimately is going to have to be answered here is what actually happened. And I don't think at this point anybody knows. Now, with regard to Mr. Baldwin, again, there's an issue here with regard to gun safety. You know, Mr. Baldwin has been quoted as saying that his gun handling skills were, nobody was better at gun handling than him. Words to that effect. I don't have the exact quotation, but he made statements to the effect that his gunfighting skills were quite excellent with respect, I assume, to the movies. Well, if you're going to be involved in the movies and you're going to be using firearms, you have to also have really good gun safety skills. And that means treating every gun as if it's loaded, not pointing it at a human being unless you intend to kill them, keeping the gun pointed in a safe direction at all times, keeping your finger off the trigger until you are ready to shoot. Now, some of these things are addressable by training. For example, indexing your finger along the firearm. I covered that in my last video. Some of these things aren't. Some of these things have to be drilled into you. You have to have range safety officers go through firearms safety training with you so that you understand, so that you don't accidentally turn when somebody asks a question and sweep your muzzle across 5 or 6 people who are standing in your way. You have to be careful about that kind of thing. Gun safety is a very important part of this, and a jury could conclude Mr. Baldwin was guilty of involuntary manslaughter simply because he did not take the safe precautions that everybody else in the industry takes when they have a firearm, which is not pointing it at somebody you don't want to kill. So, with that understanding, it is quite possible that criminal charges may come out of this for at least one person, maybe more. I don't think we'll know until the authorities finish their investigation. And it's also quite possible that a district attorney could look at this as just a terrible tragedy, and that even though they don't know exactly who was at fault, somebody was at fault. But if you can't prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, then you can't charge anybody. So it might be that there are no charges that are brought out of this, and that may indeed wind up being an equitable resolution to this matter. I don't know. I don't know what all the facts are, and it's impossible to judge without knowing what the facts are. So, with all of that said, I hope you've enjoyed this, and if you have, I would love it if you would smash the like button for me. And in addition, if you would go over here and click on the subscribe icon if you haven't already subscribed to our channel. That way you can be notified every time we release a video on this channel. Also, I really appreciate it when people leave comments. A lot of people have beliefs about gun safety and gun violence. I would love to get into a discussion about that, and indeed I may wind up doing a video on gun violence. So again, thank you for watching. I hope you have a terrific day, and I'll catch you on here next time.